There was a time when your soulmate believed that powerful emotions had to be loud. They thought love had to feel unpredictable. They believed passion always came with confusion. If a relationship felt calm, they wondered whether something was missing. Without realizing it, they slowly became familiar with emotional storms. High expectations, sudden disappointments, constant overthinking, moments of hope followed by moments of doubt. Somehow they accepted this cycle as normal, until one quiet season changed everything. Nothing dramatic happened. No unexpected event forced them to stop. Life simply became quieter. For the first time in years, they found themselves spending evenings without rushing to distract their thoughts. They sat outside after sunset. They noticed the wind moving through the trees. They watched birds disappear into the evening sky. At first the silence felt uncomfortable. Then something unexpected happened. They realized they had forgotten what peace actually felt like. This message is for the soul, who has been wondering whether someone connected to your journey is beginning to understand that love should never require constant emotional chaos, because your soulmate is learning a lesson that has quietly transformed the way they see everything. The first sign appeared in ordinary conversations. Whenever people around them created unnecessary drama, they no longer felt the need to participate. Arguments that once demanded their attention now felt strangely distant. Instead of proving themselves right, they became more interested in protecting their peace. At first, they worried this meant they were becoming emotionally detached. But the opposite was true. They were becoming emotionally healthier. They started asking themselves questions they had never considered before. Why have I always believed that emotional intensity means emotional depth? Why did calmness once feel unfamiliar? The answers slowly appeared. They remembered growing up believing that love always required struggle, that meaningful relationships demanded endless sacrifice, that happiness could never simply exist without complications. Those beliefs quietly shaped every connection they entered. Whenever life became peaceful, they unconsciously searched for problems. Whenever someone treated them with consistency, they questioned their intentions. Whenever happiness arrived, they prepared themselves for disappointment. Fear had trained them to expect chaos. Now they were beginning to unlearn that habit. One peaceful Sunday morning, while drinking coffee alone, they noticed something remarkable. Nothing extraordinary was happening. No exciting news. No emotional breakthrough. Yet they felt completely at ease. Instead of becoming restless, they smiled. For years they had mistaken peace for emptiness. Now they recognized it as emotional security. That realization stayed with them. As the days passed, they became more protective of what brought genuine calm into their life. They spent less time explaining themselves to people who misunderstood them, less time chasing approval, less time trying to fix relationships where only one person was making an effort. Instead, they invested their energy where kindness flowed naturally. Somewhere during this transformation, your connection quietly returned to their thoughts, not because they were searching for excitement, because they remembered something simple. Whenever they thought about you, they remembered feeling understood instead of judged. They remembered conversations that never left them emotionally drained. They remembered a connection that did not demand constant performance. Looking back now, they realized something beautiful. Perhaps what made your connection memorable was not how intense it felt. Perhaps it was how peaceful it allowed them to become. That thought changed the way they defined love forever. Love was no longer measured by emotional highs. It was measured by emotional safety. It was measured by whether two hearts could remain honest without fear, whether silence could exist without creating distance, whether both people could simply exist together without pretending to be someone else. For the first time in their life, they stopped asking, "Who makes my heart race?" Instead, they began asking, "Who helps my heart rest?" That single question quietly changed the direction of their future, because they were finally discovering that peace is not the absence of love. Sometimes, Peace is the deepest expression of love a heart will ever experience. As this new way of seeing life quietly settled into their heart, your soulmate noticed something that once seemed impossible. Peace had stopped feeling unfamiliar. It had started feeling like home. For years they believed they had to constantly earn happiness. If everything felt calm for too long, they expected something to go wrong. Without realizing it, they had become addicted to emotional anticipation. Their mind remained busy preparing for problems that had not even arrived. Now that habit was slowly disappearing, not because life had become perfect, but because they had changed the way they responded to life. They no longer gave every passing fear a permanent place in their heart. Instead, they allowed emotions to come, to teach, and to gently move on. This simple practice created a freedom they had never experienced before. The future no longer felt like something they needed to conquer. It became something they could peacefully welcome. One quiet afternoon, they visited a park they had not seen in years. Children were laughing. Leaves moved softly in the breeze. An elderly man sat alone reading a book with complete contentment. As they watched these ordinary moments unfold, a thought quietly entered their mind. So much of life has always been peaceful. I was simply too distracted by fear to notice. That realization stayed with them long after they returned home. From that day forward, they became more intentional about protecting the atmosphere within their own heart. They learned that not every disagreement deserved their energy. Not every misunderstanding required a long explanation. Not every opinion deserved a response. Sometimes peace grows strongest when a person chooses silence over unnecessary conflict. This lesson changed the way they interacted with everyone around them. They became slower to react, quicker to understand, more willing to listen before reaching conclusions. Friends began noticing that conversations with them felt different. There was less urgency, less tension, more presence, more sincerity. Without planning it, they had become someone whose calmness quietly helped other people feel calm as well. As this transformation continued, another realization gently appeared. They thought about the relationships that had shaped their life. Some had been exciting. Some had been unforgettable. Some had been difficult teachers, but only a few had ever made them feel emotionally safe. Naturally, their thoughts returned to your connection, not because they wanted to relive the past, because they finally understood something they had overlooked before. Your connection had never demanded that they constantly defend who they were. There had been room for honesty, room for quiet conversations, room for ordinary moments that somehow carried extraordinary comfort. Looking back now, they understood why those memories had remained alive. Peace leaves a deeper imprint on the heart than chaos ever can. Chaos captures attention. Peace transforms a person. That truth reshaped the way they viewed love itself. They no longer believed love should constantly test two people. They believed love should help two people become gentler with themselves, kinder with one another, more patient during difficult seasons, more grateful during beautiful ones. This understanding also changed the way they viewed the future. Instead of asking whether someone would always make them happy, they began asking whether they could build a life where both hearts felt emotionally safe enough to be completely real. That question carried a wisdom they had never possessed before. Because true intimacy is not created through perfection. It grows through consistency, through respect, through the quiet confidence that neither person needs to pretend in order to be accepted. The more they embraced this truth, the lighter their heart became. Old disappointments no longer controlled every expectation. Past mistakes no longer defined every new beginning. Fear no longer spoke louder than hope. There was still uncertainty ahead. Life will always contain unknown chapters, but uncertainty no longer frightened them the way it once had, because they discovered that peace is not created by knowing every answer. Peace is created by trusting who you are while walking toward whatever tomorrow may bring. Perhaps that has been the greatest transformation of all. They no longer measure the value of a connection by how intensely it shakes their emotions, They measure it by how naturally it allows them to become their truest self. And somewhere within that realization, your connection continues holding a quiet place. Not because it demanded attention, because it offered acceptance. Not because it created emotional storms, because it reminded them what emotional shelter feels like. Maybe that is why they no longer search for relationships that constantly keep them guessing. They search for conversations that feel honest, for laughter that feels effortless, for silence that never feels uncomfortable, for a love that makes two people feel lighter instead of heavier. Now they understand that peace is not the reward that comes after love. Sometimes peace is the very foundation that allows love to survive. As this awareness continues unfolding inside them, they are becoming someone who no longer mistakes emotional chaos for passion. They are becoming someone who values steadiness over uncertainty, kindness over pride, understanding over assumption, and truth over fear, perhaps, without either of you seeing it yet. That quiet change is already preparing them for the healthiest chapter of their life, because when a heart finally chooses peace instead of chaos, it also chooses a kind of love that no longer needs to prove itself every single day. It simply exists, with honesty, with trust, and with a calm confidence that grows stronger through every ordinary moment shared together.